for anyone hearing that brrr in the background,
it's hot as hell. Okay,
it's really hot.
Get used to it.
So it's fun.
We are not turning it off.
She's okay. Thank you. Now, on to the podcast. Hello, lovers, fans, casual viewers, and newbies to Nollywood. It's the Exploring Nollywood podcast. I'm your host, Mimi.
I don't know why she's very expressive as she talks. You can't see what she's doing. It's very annoying.
It's good. It's
I beg you. Yeah, wait. It's too hot for the amount of energy that she's expending.
We're
right
podcasting, and we will be professionals about it.
Professionals would provide air conditioning.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Exploring Nollywood podcast. As I said, it's your host, Mimi, and she didn't introduce herself.
They know who I am.
It's Toni. It's Antonia. Recently, we've been doing a thing where we explore different genres of Nollywood, just exploring that Nollywood. We last spoke about comedy, and now we're gonna talk about historicals.
Now, disclaimer, not even a disclaimer. This is how I will realize if anybody is my friend or not. If I say, oh, I want to watch a village film, and you put a film where people are wearing skirts, shirts, t-shirts, clothing,
then and any evidence of the West.
Of colonialism, unacceptable.
Well, let us define what historicals are. Okay, historicals. I feel like they're pretty unique to Nollywood, or like, say, African. To people that were colonized, historicals mean a different thing.
I think what we define, I don't know if that's a genre in itself. I think what we would describe as historicals would be, especially in Nollywood, would be films, TV shows that will showcase what Nigeria was like, or what certain parts of Nigeria was like
before the
West.
Okay. I agree. I don't know if I agree. So would you say a film that is set in, say, 1960, isn't that a historical?
What are they wearing?
Sure. What a question.
That's my question.
They are wearing what they were wearing in 1960s in Nigeria.
Which is clothes. I don't want to see that.
Let me drill it down. I think I will name it something else. Let us call it village films.
No. Because if you, as my friend, put on a village film and they're wet, and it's simply, oh, but they're in the village, so it's a village film, you are stupid.
Oh, okay.
If they're not tying wrapper on their chest, if there's no beads, if they're no cowries, if you don't expect to see cowries,
if the DBI is not there.
Exactly. I think it's anything that is pre-Christianity in Nigeria.
Christianity and the West are the same thing. Yeah, but I mean, we talked about JoJo and Jazz, and in that episode we also said that village films do not come under JoJo and Jazz.
They don't fall under the good versus evil that we're used to, where it's Christianity versus African magic.
Love it. So I think when we talk about village films or historicals in this particular context, in the context of Nollywood,
okay,
we're talking about films that were set before the West. What about films that are set about the West coming? Are they not village films? They meet your category. They are dressed in whatever it is that they are dressed in, that they used to be dressed in. Just the white man comes.
Maybe it's the type of story then.
No, it cannot, because as we will see, historicals of village films can have different stories.
They can have different stories, but they're not going to have a story about a runs girl.
But they can be action, they can be romance, they can be comedy.
But in the context of that
particular time period.
And
we never define the time period. Can anybody say that?
Our issue is defining the time period.
What do you mean?
Because whilst for me, a historical is if they're wearing wrapper and they have a specific non-Christian god, that is a historical. Whereas for you, it might be different.
Oh, you can tell that. Oh yes, it's before the invasion by the white man. I hope I'm not losing some of my audience. But if you are offended by that, waka. Like, I don't need that. But I'm saying that.
Imagine someone being offended by you recognizing colonialism as a thing.
Yeah,
Go to school.
you don't know the world these days, man. Some people are like,
Just
cray
go to
cray.
school.
Just go on Twitter and you see some bullshit. I'm thinking that, okay, we can say it is before the white men came. But when? Would you be able to say it is, name any historical film and tell me if you can name the year? I mean, we might not even have had years.
But then it's the same as if you have like a film set in, say, ancient Greece or something.
They know the year.
But then that's Greece. We've probably gotten our dates and times from Greece, no?
I mean, yeah, we use the Gregorian calendar. Roman. It's Roman.
Okay, so ancient Rome then. Sorry, Professor.
Let's just move on. What I'm saying is that, unlike Hollywood, we can't say, oh, this was the medieval period of Nigeria. I mean, if before Nigeria was even Nigeria. So there are some places that sometimes when we can't even point out where it is. We just know, oh, a generic Igbo village. Oh, Benin City. Oh, Kaduna. Oh, Sokoto.
But I think what the main thing is, this is Nollywood's interpretation of what things were like back then. We don't know.
Or we
might not know.
Or we do know, but the whole population is ignorant, including us.
Oh.
But it's true. Okay, tell me this. As Nigerians, are we not ignorant of our history? You know we are. We only know about Benin Kingdom and the Oba Radio Igodomigodo and all those things because we went to school in Benin City.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Because
I didn't pay attention in edu class.
You're typical. This is what I'm saying.
Okay, it's not my fault. Edo uncle left a lot to be desired with his teaching style.
You know what? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. But
what I'm saying is that, first of all, we do not know our history, whether that is by choice or by chance, by deliberately, killing, obscuring, or stealing our history, or just by pure ignorance. But we don't know our history. So usually, when we talk about Nollywood and Nollywood historicals and Nollywood village films, it is always an idealized version of what it was. Mm-hmm. Or say even some tradition, like there may have been so many interesting traditions that because they weren't written down, or they weren't written down in a way that we are able to remember, or because they've been lost through oral tradition, that we don't have. And what we do have are Western ideas of what things were, mm-hmm. and Nollywood making up Nigerian history.
But I'm never gonna watch a Nigerian film and think that that's Nigerian. That is Nigerian history.
Oh, do you really think they used to go around dressed in two wrapper that they tied in the back and in the front and drew markings on themselves?
I want them to, Marianne.
How do you know that is how it is?
I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that's the way it was. But then that is because I'm grown up and I'm educated to master's level. Obviously, as a child, or when you were younger, that's what you think. That's what you assume because that's what you're being shown.
Well,
but now I know that sometimes it's just a white man's fault. Okay.
But speaking of the white man, they did take pictures then. There are pictures online that you can Google about what Africans look like. And even before there were pictures, there were drawings. And they, let me tell you this, they don't look like what Nollywood says they look like. There were lots of crazy hairdos then. Like, this is, okay, this is another thing. I feel like colonialism has taken so much from us. Let's talk about hair, for example. When you go to Nollywood, you can see, and Nollywood historicals, you can see some evidence of the creative hairstyles that they could have used. But when you look at
Koso,
yeah, not even Koso. Yeah. No, sis, let me tell you this. Koso was starting level for these girls. For these children, Koso is just starting levels. What? Tread? What is that? They were making shapes with their hairdos, with their hair, with their natural hair. They were making shapes. they were doing things. So I think we've like gone away from the genre and we're just lamenting about the state of the world. But I think it's just sad how much history of Nigeria that we might never ever be able to get. Okay, things seems to have got away with us. As we're defining what historicals are, but let's just say that these are stories that are set in the past before colonization, or are about colonization, or are set during would you agree to during colonization?
I don't like watching those films. It's too sad.
Okay. Moving on. We've talked a bit about it, but what are some things that you find in a village film? First of all, the attires, the costuming. Shout out to costumers. Shout out to them, because like they come up with some creative stuff.
And I think the costumes themselves will tell you a part of the story.
Yeah, no. Let's even talk about this rapper culture. Let's talk about rapper culture.
Hashtag
rapper culture. Ankara. Sometimes it's Ankara. Most of the time it's Ankara. There it is. So, do you think we had Ankara in those days? Or do you think we used animal skins?
I think we used animal skins.
Yeah, probably. So where did we get...
But then that's what we said before. These are our tellings of it. This is our interpretation of it. Yeah. This is a very stylized way of telling a story.
Okay, fine.
So I think instead of thinking about it as this is the way things were before, think of it as this is the way they have chosen to tell this particular story.
Or this particular set of stories.
Yeah, set in this particular... I think we need to come away from time frame. Okay. And go more into maybe this setting, this scene. This is where they've chosen to set. This is how they've chosen to present this information. All right. This story. And that's its own genre film.
That's okay. I think maybe I'm too hung up on historical accuracy here. Yes. But I also want it to be considered, because when you look at some of the films that I say new Nollywood, like you see that they've paid attention to the authenticity of it, to what people would have been wearing or how things could have looked. But then that's new Nollywood. I think that when we spoke about new Nollywood before, we talked about how it's trying to emulate the ideas of Hollywood. Okay. And Hollywood does pay attention to historical accuracy. Okay. Hollywood does pay attention to, okay, if we are setting something in this particular time frame, yeah, the costumes have to be accurate. The way they speak has to be a certain way. The way they look, the phrases that they use, the ideas that they have to be specific to that time period. Fair dues. And new Nollywood is trying to do that. Which I applaud them, but we'll talk about new Nollywood. Talk about rapper culture. Back to that before we got sidetracked. I do like the way that they use like rapper and materials to signify tribe. Yes. Marriage status. Yep. And societal status. Yes. If they're wearing a single wrapper, if they're tying a single wrapper, she married, she old.
Single long wrapper.
Single long, not just a single wrapper.
Single long wrapper.
If she has two wrapper, one for the boobs, one for the hips, make it look nice, make it look sexy. Wow, she's a maiden. Yeah. She's a maiden, and she probably wants to marry the prince.
Marianne, we discussed this in the romance episode. Who doesn't want to marry a prince?
Okay, yes. Okay, fine. No problem. Everyone wants to marry a prince. Another thing, costuming and tribes, because non-Nigerian people, Nigeria is not a monolith. You get to see different tribes. Historicals also give different tribes a way to showcase not only their tribal wear, but their tribal customs and their tribal ways of, say, greeting an elder, marriage, etc., etc., etc. It's historicals are a way to display your culture, or as you have said, what we thought the culture is.
Oh, the cultural practices that you have now is what you assumed you've always done.
Yeah. So I think
So-
historicals are a beautiful way of actually showing that. But in Nollywood, most of these historicals are going to be Igbo. And then we have some Yoruba ones. Kunle Afolayan, always giving us that Yoruba flair in Nollywood. Appreciate. And some of them are Hausa or Sokoto or
Watch
Fulani.
the Hausa one.
Yeah, that's a
on-
new Nollywood. Another thing that you find in a lot of historicals is this idea of a monarchy. So you see, they were Nigerian princes, and there are still a lot of Nigerian princes. Anyway,
Why?
moving on.
No. Why would you use that particular phrase?
What?
Like a Nigerian prince?
They always make fun of us for scamming things because a Nigerian prince is doing this and doing
They
that.
have their own. Okay, I was going to swear there, but they have a prince. Why can't we?
Because that's what people use to scam them.
Oh.
Yeah, we are sort of. The problem here.
know. I know that is why you brought it up. However, I don't think you should play to that stereotype.
What I'm just saying is that there is always an idea of a monarchy. So if it's Igbo,
You have Igwes. Igwes are Igbo. They are up.
yes,
Igwes are Igbo word.
yes. In Igbo land, it's an Igwe. If it's in Benin,
It's an Oba.
Oba. Says Urobo,
Cultured.
it's an Ovie. If it's in Sokoto, it's an Emir. Understand?
Yeah, I've never seen one that's an Emir.
Well, there is. You
Or
just
an
don't
Ovie.
watch Kannywood. Well,
I think I've seen an Obi.
yeah.
Tokwe.
Yes.
Say.
Yes.
I don't know the Igwe one. Sorry, guys.
Igwe. No, that's not it.
That's disrespectful.
No, but there's the idea of a monarchy. There's usually an Igwe and a council of chiefs. This is just. Or if it's set in Benin, there's an Oba and his council.
There's always a council.
There's always a council. So it was a monarchy / oligarchy. Sometimes you just have the elders in the village, but usually it's a monarchy. Do you think those were tattoos? So in historicals, they're not just plain clothes. They just don't have the true wrapper. There are always signs and symbols written on their bodies. Do you think that was supposed to mimic tattoos? Imagine if
Yes
we had
and
tattoos.
no. Thinking of not historicals, or like thinking of films that are set in the jungle and things, talking about jungle. Oh God, I was gonna say jungle people, but like people
Jesus.
that
Jungle people?
people that live where there's a lot of grass and trees and
Foliage.
jungle. Does it foliage? Maybe foliage is a completely different thing.
Forest.
No, that's the word I couldn't even think of. Forest people, jungle people. Yeah. So people that lived
That
in.
don't sound right, man.
So people that when you see films of people that lived in the forest and lived in jungles, they are usually marked in some way
Exactly.
as a form of camouflage.
I don't know.
No, that I'm telling you, it wasn't a question.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you that's why they were marked.
So maybe.
So it could be that that's where that idea has come from, or I think they could definitely be tattoos, because you will find that tattoos might denote your social
rank.
stance, your social standing, your tribe, I think people from Hawaii and
Aboriginal people, yeah.
Native Americans, they had tattoos that
So
would
why do we have to? Maybe tattoos are not evil, African aunties. Well, I mean, they will still think tattoos are evil because it's African magic, but unlike, I think, when we look at our historicals, unlike other countries' historicals, other cultures' historicals, while there is a sense of different classes, it's not as strict as, say, China, or even in Europe, where they have like the peasants and the nobles, or serfs and the
They
bourgeoisie.
definitely had peasants in historicals, man. I don't know what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that it's not as rigid. I don't think so. For example, now we all know about Osun. Different culture, different tribes have forbidden people. Oh my god, guys! So many movies around that concept. You know the prince gonna fall in love with the Osun.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah.
If he doesn't, then that's a weird film.
Yeah, but so we don't have as strict as a caste system as say India.
I think we do.
Okay,
So you won't see that coming across so much because there weren't that many people or there wasn't a big population that they're showing you in the film.
Okay, fair dues.
So if you're thinking about actual history,
yeah, there'll be a lot more people moving and interacting with each other.
Yes, so it was very obvious which class belongs to where.
Okay, fair dues.
Whereas in a historical film where you have less a population, more a caste, you might not. You will see, oh, that's the king or that's the Oba, that's the Igwe. Those are his followers. That's his council. That's his family. That's everybody else.
That's everybody else, and
that's
the poor.
That's
blind,
the very, very poor.
That's the poor blind maiden that lives in the forest and smells of doo-doo, but the prince still falls in love with her.
Marianne, not doo-doo.
I say
they
that
all smelt of doo-doo.
How do you wait? Have you not heard of African soap? We had soap. We were bathing, I think. Oh God, we're so ignorant. We're so ignorant.
Yeah, we're talking about films here. We're not talking about history.
We should have probably done some research into the history of our people. No, because we're
probably
we're
it's
exploring called the Exploring Nollywood
podcast, not exploring Nigeria and all her history.
But do you also think that because our film industry is undeveloped, we have not been able to address these issues? So, for example, in Hollywood, they might be able to address the difference between different caste systems or different class systems, but we're not as developed because all we're doing is run around doing romance novels. I'm just saying it as, I am harsh today. But what I'm saying is that most of the historicals are romance. Those that are not romance are comedy, and those that are not comedy are
terrifying.
Yes, a horror. Is what you mean to say?
No, I meant they're terrifying.
But back then they were adapting for plays and books, and there were more nuanced takes. They would say take Wole Soyinka and his plays that were adapted, or plays from the theater that were adapted into movies. Those have a more developed, more nuanced version of history, rather than there's a prince in a monarchy in one village in Igbo land, and he falls in love with the blind orphan girl. She has to be orphan. She cannot have parents.
She might have a mother
that's going to die. Language is very important for historical. They do not talk casually. They do not talk colloquially. They speak proper English. You will not find any hint of pidgin in a village movie.
That is true.
They will always speak in that stilted, not Shakespearean, but close to Old English type of way.
They will never speak pidgin.
No.
They don't.
That is.
Why would they?
Exactly, it wasn't invented by them. The white man hadn't come bringing with him his English, and then we hadn't pigeonized it. That's not a word.
That's definitely not a word.
But you know what I mean. So
Benin is a very unique situation because I think they have a lot of things written down.
Yes.
And they have a lot of history that they can pull from.
Yeah, that is true.
That we know of anyway.
For example, you can't just have a random Oba.
It has to be an Oba that actually existed.
So yeah,
and then there's a record of the Obas that existed.
that have existed, and they even carved down a lot of their histories on special stools. So you can go to a museum in the West. I don't know where they are exactly, but probably the British Museum, and find these special stools. And obviously there's nobody around there, there's nobody around to read them, but that is the way that they wrote down history as well.
I think you'll find some in Nigerian museums exist. Cool.
Do you even know there was an Igbo way of writing things down too? It's a symbolic language, like hieroglyphics. Maybe we're a lot more evolved than we think.
I didn't think we weren't evolved.
I'm just saying that if you look at the characteristics of a civilization according to Western...
According to whom, Miriam? According to whom?
According to...
Colonialism has done us bad, guys.
According to Western ideas, a civilization is one that writes things down. I'm just saying that according to Western ideas, what they made us feel like we were savages, and we weren't. Although there's nothing wrong with being savages.
What do you mean? It's a negative thing.
Because they have made it negative. The white man is in your head. I'm gonna leave that in. Still on that idea of Benin Kingdom and the sources of inspiration, I think when we talk about not knowing the years that some things are set in, actually, if you go to Benin history, we are able to track down what was happening because they had a way of recording things down. A lot of the things that we define historicals by might not apply to them because we know the time of Oba Oredionwa, Queen Idia, etc., etc. So we might have a lot more history recorded than we know, or than we know.
I think it's good to, as a disclaimer, we are not representative of a population of people that know about Nigerian history.
But
those people exist.
But we went to school in Nigeria. Well, I went to school in Nigeria. We were definitely taught Nigerian history. Soundscape. Sound is so important in a traditional movie. We don't want to be hearing cars.
You're not going to hear cars. You're going to hear
crickets.
You're going to hear crickets. It's going to be quiet. You're going to hear
birds.
You're going to hear birds.
You're going to hear nature.
Yeah.
They actually do very well on soundscape. Even the cheapest, most badly made Nollywood movie, when it comes to sound and location, they don't miss.
They don't miss.
They really don't. And then what I always enjoy is the Igbo flute.
I wish you wouldn't do that.
I'll put it in. But I like the sound of the Igbo flute. If it's Yoruba, you have the drum. Yes. Have we talked about traditional Yoruba movies?
I think we don't talk about Yoruba movies in general because we are not Yoruba and we tend not to watch Yoruba films. If you want to speak to them about Yoruba films, talk to your mother that went to school in Abeokuta, so she knows quite a lot about them.
Maybe. Or I'll get somebody that's interested in Yoruba movies. I'm sure when we come to talk about Yoruba movies, we will include the traditional versions of them. Because I love the outfits, I love the costumes, I love the hair. And there's this really good Yoruba movie called The Rivals. It's quite old. It stars Desmond Elliot. The adaptation of a book and a play. And it's actually very, very good. So you can check that one out. But the soundscapes are always on point. You have nature. You have the traditional instruments.
I think you find that where you find like that, you know, that really teeny piano sound that you normally get in Nollywood films that builds suspense.
Yeah.
You don't get that in
there's no piano in
there's
traditional.
no piano.
Because it is an instrument of the white man.
Oh, okay. It's an instrument of modern times, Marianne. Relax. So you won't find that in a film that was meant to be set in the bush. Obviously, so you get the flutes, the drums. Sometimes there's singing.
Oh yes, there's definitely sometimes singing. There's some really good singing. There's singing in native languages.
Yeah.
Or just, how did we forget about traditional musicals? It exists, and they're so good. When we did the romance episode, we talked about the traditional musical. The traditional musical where they're singing to each other. Yeah. So there is that genre of traditional musicals. They're not much, but they're distinct. I think if you're going to do a musical, it's more likely to be traditional than to be modern.
I think is that it's easier to do. I think there's less that you have to do with a. Well, I'm not a director, producer, or a writer, so I wouldn't know. But it feels like there's less that you'd have to do because all you have to do is sort of you're usually putting two people and they're singing to each
So
other.
that, yeah.
Usually not hardly ever in English.
Yeah, unaccompanied. And then, the language makes it sweeter.
Oh, the language makes varies.
So, no, when it comes to sound, traditional movies are always on point. And then when we move to new Nollywood, they know what they are doing. They are using the traditional instruments, but say like the Igbo flutes. If it's a new Nollywood traditional movie, and they might not use the flutes, but they will use something that sounds like the flutes. I feel like there's a little bit of authenticity that's sort of missed there in new Nollywood. We talked about location. What we did not say is that there's an actress, I really love her, she's very talented, Oma Namdi, and she just opened like a whole massive shooting studios, and it's just all traditional settings. So palaces, huts, thatched roof, things written on them. So places that people that want to film traditional movies can actually just go hire the venue out and film there, rather than hoping that they will find a village somewhere or something.
Well, that opens sort of like the door for new Nollywood to try.
Yes, to try and do. Oh, so if they're saying,
did very well.
Yeah, if they're saying, it's hard to find settings that are authentic.
No excuses.
What we're saying is that we just want more new Nollywood traditional movies, and we know that yes, it does. It's probably more expensive, but it's well done, and that's what we want to see. Well, that's all for this episode. Join us in part 2, where we'll be talking about more traditional movies.